Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Hagen History Center's Spring 2021 Speaker Series. I am Shelby Grammel, Events and Outreach Coordinator at the Hagen History Center. Our speaker tonight is Mr. Brandon Wiley, founder of OpenedEyes. Before I introduce Brandon, I just have a few announcements from Hagen History Center. We are currently closed to the public due to the ongoing pandemic, but we are working to complete new and inspiring exhibits to be open in July of this year. Next Wednesday at 7 p.m., Mr. Johnny Johnson will join our speaker series as guest speaker. He will give a PowerPoint presentation with the Ada Lawrence collection to highlight pictures of family life in the African American community. If you have any questions during the presentation tonight, please feel free to drop them in the comment section below. If you're listening to or watching a later broadcast of this program, please feel free to send us your questions. As always, I encourage you to look at our website, eriehistory.org, for any up-to-date events, blogs, and more. Be sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Brandon Wiley. Brandon earned his master's degree in clinical mental health counseling and is a licensed professional counselor. He is an alumni of Gannon University. Brandon founded OpenedEyes in 2014 as a result of personal experiences of racial discrimination and identity crisis due to his biracial background. Brandon felt that the world needs a program to encourage and increase dialogue around social justice-related issues. Brandon is passionate in the areas of self-development, diversity and inclusion, and cultural appropriation. Brandon, thank you for being here today, and I'm going to mute myself and you can take it away.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. Thank you so much for having me. It is always a pleasure to have the opportunity to do things of this nature. And as I was telling Shelby and Sarah a little bit ago, typically it's workshops, trainings, motivational speaking. It's nice to be able to sit here and be able to talk a little bit about this organization that I put together and to be able to talk about what we do and the actual initiatives that we are putting forth in our community. And, of course, and I'll get into OpenedEyes in terms of, how it was birthed, what we do. I'll go over some organizations that we've worked with, both local here in Erie and otherwise, because we don't just limit ourselves to Erie. But this is our birthplace, so we have a very special appreciation and love for the good old 814. So, I'm excited to be here with you all. And again, my organization, OpenedEyes, and they gave a little bit of an overview about myself, and I'll go into a little bit more because I think it's pertinent to the situation, again, of how I got to this point in my life. And just a little bit about me. Again, I graduated from Gannon University. I've been in Erie for about 15 years. Got my bachelor's in 2010 and my master's degree in 2013. And I'm currently a licensed professional counselor in the state of PA. I was also featured in the 40 Under 40 in 2016 Erie Reader, which was just such a big honor, to be recognized and to be along other great people who are in the community who are doing just wonderful things here. It was just such an honor, and Erie has so much great potential and great entrepreneurs that are really just pushing the agenda in so many different areas in regards to technology and any type of innovation. It's incredible, and it was amazing and an honor to be alongside those individuals and to be a part of the 40 Under 40 class, regardless of what year it was in. This is a very important topic for me. Diversity, inclusion, those words are so, I feel at times oversaturated. We hear them so often. We hear, oh, I have to do a diversity and inclusion program and kind of going through the motions and what does that mean? And yes, I've heard what diversity is and I've heard what inclusion is, but what are why is it essential? Why is it important for us to talk about diversity and inclusion? Well, I have to first and foremost start for me, why this was important for me. And, you know, and I typically like to start talking about, even before I was born, my mother, who my mom and dad are on they should be checking out the live. So hi, mom and dad, if you are on the call, watching this right now, I love you guys. You know, I was born in, as I like to say, a struggle. And this is a story I don't really share too often, even in my trainings and workshops, because it is really personal, and it is really at times difficult to talk about. But I feel like this might be a good opportunity to disclose it. When my mother was pregnant with me, she was older. She was about 37, 38. I think she was 38 when she had me. But it was a high risk pregnancy. And so the doctors at the time had told her, it's not looking too good for this baby. There might be some birth defects, and you might want to consider, termination. And my parents at the time already had, a couple of miscarriages, and, things weren't working well. And my mom, again, was a high risk type of pregnancy. And so when we were finally able to, they were able to get pregnant and stay pregnant for a period of time, they were given this news, and it was devastating for my mom and my dad. And because they have gone through so much prior, and psychologically and mentally, that's exhausting. And they were told to, your baby is probably going to have a lot of birth defects. My dad and my mother didn't want to hear that, so they ended up going to Pittsburgh to get a second opinion. And lo and behold, after much testing and after much, examination, they determined that I was actually okay, and there was nothing wrong. And they don't know where these doctors got this information from or what was going on with their testing and their scanning, but everything aside from my mother being older was on track. And my mother had me, and at that time when she did, we both almost died. She lost a lot of blood. I had the cord wrapped around my neck, and we almost both lost our lives. And so I think about things like that, and I think about my life, and I think about the struggle that I have endured. And again, I'm not saying my struggle is this great struggle that is unbearable. We all have our struggles, and we all deal with struggle and depression and anxiety in different ways. But for me, there was a lot that I had to overcome to get to this point. And at any given time, I never thought that I would be here today, just giving everything that I've been through and everything that I have endured. I didn't expect to make it to this point in my life. And so I reflect on, the struggles that I had even before I was born. And I know I'm supposed to be here for a reason. I know I'm supposed to give a message for a reason. I know I'm supposed to be a vessel for this. And it took me a long time to get to this point, to recognize, hey, this is my calling. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. I'm supposed to help people be better people. I'm supposed to help the world, embrace culture, embrace our brothers and sisters, despite color of our skin, despite our gender differences, despite our sexuality, any of these various things that we tend to fight and argue over so often and so frequently. And so, as I gotten older, I remember, and this is where the journey really started for me. I mean, the journey started obviously way before, but the diversity and the racism for me that I endured started at this moment. And I was in 6th grade at Our Lady of Fatima School, and I was walking down the hall, and this was in Farrell, PA, for anybody who is familiar with Farrell, Pennsylvania. I'm from Sharon originally, but I went to a private school in Farrell. I was walking down the hallway, and I'll never forget this little girl. She says, I was walking down the hall. She said, hey, hey, hey. She said, hey, you. She said, what are you? And I remember thinking to myself, I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know what she was trying to imply. And I asked her again, I said, well, what do you mean? In my little brain, in my little self, what do you mean? What am I? Like, I'm a human being. She said, no, what are you? You look different. You don't look like you're just white. You don't look like you're this, you look like you have something going on with you. And this little girl didn't mean any harm, but what she did was made me self-conscious. And it wasn't her intention, but it was the way I took it. And so I remember going home that day, and I remember asking my mother, and I was just like, mom, this little girl asked me, what are you? And it made me feel, it made me feel uncomfortable. And I remember her, taking me and saying, Brandon, or she called me Brandy Poo, but nobody, not everybody's allowed to call me Brandy Poo. That's only my mother's nickname for me. She said, Brandy Poo, she's like, you're just Brandon. You're just you. And I love you for that. And I began to think, as I've gotten older, and I reflect on that particular moment, that particular conversation that I had with her, and I could only imagine the fear that she was really feeling. Like this was a significant fear. This was something that was real, that she probably was dreading happening one day and didn't know how to talk about it. And I never noticed the difference between my mother and my father. It was always this kind of, that's my mom and that's my dad. That's my dad's family, that's my mom's family, but that's my family. And so that question set a precedence for me. And then it began to carry with me everywhere I went. And it was almost like it was a domino effect. Soon as that little girl asked me that question, I began to hear it all the time. I began to be asked it all the time. And it was from kids, it was from adults, it was from just every facet that you could think of. And that led to a lot of my anxiety, and that led to a lot of my depression as I went through high school, especially when I was in high school. And it wasn't that I didn't have any friends. It wasn't that I didn't have, people to lean on, but I did not have that core base. And I realized that, and a lot of you who are listening may be, you may be able to understand where I'm coming from when I say this. We try to fit in, and you do that so much, you try to fit in so much that you end up losing yourself. And as I call it, getting lost in the sauce. I lost who I was trying to be something that I wasn't. And I realized going through life, this was so significant for me that, and I don't want to say I wasted time, because don't get me wrong, everything that happened to me, it was supposed to happen to me. I was supposed to endure that. I was supposed to go through those various issues and those struggles, those trials and those tribulations, to be a better person, to be able to do what I'm doing now, where I'm talking to people and I'm encouraging people and I'm letting people know that, hey, it's okay. You're going to get through this. And I'm going to tell you why you're going to get through this is because I got through this. And I know if I got through this, I know you can get through this. So this what are you question was more of a philosophy of my life than anything. It wasn't just a question about race or what my racial background was. Yes, that's how it was asked in that context, but it was more of a philosophy. It was a battle cry. And I was able to embrace that at some point, and I'm gonna tell you how I embraced it. I'm gonna tell you why What Are You is now the philosophy behind my organization, OpenedEyes. Why it is the main question that I ask at every given talk, every given presentation, every time I'm interacting, every time I'm promoting this idea of inclusion. Why What Are You is so empowering for me. It's because what are you is not so much a question anymore of what your race is, but it's what you're made of. And I found this out when I was in my last year of grad school. I had a dream. I know it sounds very Martin Luther King-ish of me, but in fact, had a legitimate dream about this question and about writing a book about this question and calling it, What Are You? And I remember thinking to myself, why would I call a book that you know, whatever the higher power is here, why do you want me to write something and call it what are you? Like, that's the question that I hate hearing the most. That's the thing that brought me to my depressive thoughts and my depressive feelings. It's the thing that made me feel suicidal. It's the thing that made me, you know, contemplate killing myself, taking myself out. I did that plenty of times. And I've gotten to the point where I did not care to be here on this planet, in this world anymore. This question did that to me, but this question also, and as I reflected on that dream, it was an opportunity for me to make it my own and to adopt it and to take the negative connotation of what it meant to me and make it something positive, something influential, something that is beyond me. And from what are you, from this book idea, I thought about starting a program. You know, hey, why not? You know what I mean? Like, why I might as well. And the idea of creating a program came from a conversation with a friend during an 1.5-hour drive from Erie back to my hometown. I'll never forget it. And it really changed my life. It changed everything, because it was at that moment in time that I realized that what I need to do is I need to create something that benefits the world, that benefits just the people. And little did I know 5-6 years ago when I created and started OpenedEyes, that I foresee George Floyd happening, that I foresee all of this social unrest occurring. Granted, I knew it was happening. I knew George Floyd was a visual, I think, a visual shock factor for people, because it was the first time that people had actually seen, you know, something so graphic and so horrific, to the point where it was even unbearable to watch. But I had seen it. I had started OpenedEyes during the Trayvon Martin situation. You know, I was in the end of what was going on. So George Floyd was just a reinforcement, you know, and so OpenedEyes serves its purpose in regards to situations like we're going through right now in our country and in our world, as a matter of fact. And it's important to understand, you know, just what that is. And we all have a voice in this, and it's important to be mindful of that. But once I started this organization, you know, once I started OpenedEyes, and I thought to myself, well, now I'm going to start an organization that is, you know, geared towards social justice. I have to realize now that, hey, I'm going to have to speak in front of people. And a lot of people don't know this about me, but when I was in high school and I was in elementary school, I hated public speaking. I would rather swim with sharks or play with snakes than go ahead in front of somebody and public speak. I would get to the point where I would throw up. I would get to the point where I would just completely lose myself. I would stutter. I wouldn't go to school some days because I was afraid to do a presentation. You know, I would fake being sick and put it off as much as I possibly could. But with that, with this understanding, I had to remind myself that if I want to do something important and something major, I have to step out of my comfort zone. I have to begin to be this new person. I have to create myself and develop myself and my skill set, and recognize that in order for me to enact true change, in order for me to be a vessel to help encourage other people, I had to believe in myself. And as we get into this talk a little bit more, and I talk more about OpenedEyes, you know, you're going to understand that this program is a lot about not just diversity education, but about self-development, about education of self, knowing who we are and how important that is. And of course, you know, I'm sharing a quote, and it's not to boast myself, but this is, I really want to hammer down on how self-conscious I was and how intimidated I was in life because of my experiences. I never would have thought I would have been in a position like this. And so I have to remind myself, you know, as I remind other people, that your only limitation is yourself. Your only limitation is who you are and what you believe yourself to be. And we can will ourselves to levels that are completely unheard of. And so I really want to hone in on that. And you know, OpenedEyes itself has manifested into that great, you know, this program for self-development and encouragement. And I always have to give a shout out to, and this is, you know, some of my staff that are part of OpenedEyes. Before I even get into this presentation even further, these people are phenomenal people, and they are diverse people of many different walks of life, but who have made OpenedEyes what it is. And I always have to give them a special shout out. I love them to death, and you know, they're important to me. And so these are the people that are also involved with OpenedEyes. So what is OpenedEyes exactly? What is the premise behind it? What is the mission? What is the vision? What is, you know, why do I do this? OpenedEyes, we're a 501c3 organization, and we are designed to educate and to train in the areas of self-development and diversity. I always like to refer to OpenedEyes as a multifaceted program. You know, when we hear, again, the words diversity and we hear the words inclusion, you know, a lot of people automatically think of black and white, or, you know, da-da-da-da. Diversity and inclusion itself is very broad. Under the umbrella of diversity is mental health. Under the umbrella of diversity is ageism and, you know, sexuality. All of these various things are a part of, you know, the diversity landscape. And so what I wanted to do was create something that was non-traditional, at least in regards to the way we view diversity and inclusion and the way that we train in diversity inclusion. I wanted to create a program that was going to challenge you to be better than you were yesterday, to not only understand and appreciate the diverse world that's around us, but also appreciate and understand our diverse selves. And this teme noce is a Latin word for know thyself. And so if there's any Matrix fans out there, in the first Matrix, when Neo walks into the Oracle's place, she has a sign over her walkway, and it says teme noce. And if you're familiar with that whole concept, again, it's about understanding and knowing who we are. And so a nice little fun fact, I'm a big Matrix guy, but check that out if you missed that before. But it's an important part of OpenedEyes. It is an important part of what it is that I do to encourage, you know, inclusion. Inclusion is also about inclusive of ourselves. And if we don't understand our prejudices, and if we don't understand our biases, guess what? We're gonna have a hard time in understanding and what we need to do to be social advocates, to be better people. So this is why I tie in this, you know, these psychological aspects, the self-efficacy, this, you know, this idea of confidence within self. It plays such an important role in our development. And as we go on with this, you know, presentation further, you know, we're gonna hone in, or I'm at least gonna hone in on a couple of different concepts of what it is that we do and what it is and what we educate in. And these are just a few things that we really go over. You know, the idea of equality versus equity, you know, proportional representation and equal access, implicit biases and microaggressions. You know, when George Floyd happened, that was the thing that everybody was coming to me on. I needed implicit bias training. So implicit bias training is a big, you know, big deal. I'll go into a little bit about what implicit biases are and microaggressions, and I'll always offer some examples as well. The idea of group cohesion and peer relationships. For those of you who are on this call who have been to one of our trainings and workshops, obviously you're familiar with a lot of these concepts that we discussed. And of course, I'm going to go over some of these again, but I do tie a different, I am going to hone in on a different topic, and it's something that I've been working on for quite some time. But what I have found that a lot of people want to know about is, organizational diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about, the importance of diversity and inclusion within companies. These Fortune 500 companies are now making, their diversity inclusion initiatives top priority. I do want to cover that. So this is going to be some new information that I want to just throw out to everybody as something that, we're going to look to begin putting programming together for in trainings and workshops for this organizational diversity and inclusion, because this is the direction that a lot of people are going. And if these Fortune 500 companies are really taking these initiatives, then it's something that we have to be mindful of and watch out for. And so, and a lot of these other concepts, active listening, privilege, systemic racism, servant leadership, organizational diversity, again, all important concepts to what it is that we do. I do want to take the time to recognize some of the organizations that we have worked with in the past and that we are currently working with. Again, from all over, from Farrell, PA, YMCA, Edinburgh, Penn State, PA Cyber, the Police Department of Erie, the Nonprofit Partnership, which we currently are conducting a series with. Again, these are just some of the organizations that we have worked with and that have reached out to us and wanted something, to have their employees and their organization, run smooth. What can we do to be better people? What can we do to have a better organization? And how can we be more inclusive in our efforts? So I do always like to highlight these organizations because, of course, a lot of them reached out and they wanted it and they wanted to understand, they wanted more. Which is important. I'm going to talk about that as well, like the importance of diversity training. And I'm also going to talk about why diversity trainings fail, because I think that's essential as well. We need to understand why sometimes these diversity programs that companies put together just are not effective, because there's some of them that are not. There's some of them that are actually, they go backwards or forward. But nonetheless, we'll cover a couple of those things. And, and this is a concept that I like to talk about. And again, I've kind of honed in on some of these before, but the importance of mindfulness and awareness and what that means for us. I began the search and I guess the interest in mindfulness-based practices back when I was in college and I was an undergrad. And, I'll never forget, I wrote a blog about it. And it was during the times of my own self-reflection. I struggled, from an academic standpoint at times in school. And so I was getting, because I was a very anxious kid, a very anxious person, and got ahead of myself a lot. And when things wouldn't go my way, because of the nature of my being, I would automatically shut down. I would automatically think that I wasn't good enough and that I wasn't able to, be what I needed to be. And I came across this idea of mindfulness-based practices. And what I began to do is self-exploration, is in scanning. When I got to college, obviously, that was a very pivotal point for me, because where I was from, I felt as if I was not growing. I wasn't coming into myself. And again, still battling with those questions of what are you, and trying to fit into, how do I dress, or how do I talk, or what do I say, or what groups of people do I hang out with, and what do I need to do to fit in? All of those various things that happened to me, because I've been through it. I heard the tans. Oh, Brandon, you're dressing like a white boy. Or Brandon, you're dressing like a black boy. Or Brandon, you talk like a black guy. Or Brandon, you're talking like a white dude. Why are you wearing an American Eagle? That's for white people. Why are you wearing blah, blah, blah? You know, all of these various things that actually can tie into what we have here in microaggressions. I heard all of it all the time. And when you have that stuff pounded in your head constantly, again, you're going to lose yourself and you're going to carry that with you. But thankfully, I was able to break out of that. Thankfully, when I got to college, I was able to restart, hit the restart button, refresh myself, and recognize that I have an opportunity here to really restart myself. And in order to do that, in order to get to where I needed to be, I needed to have a sense of mindfulness, and I needed to know who I was, not who other people wanted me to be. And maybe you're on this call right now, and maybe you're in that position currently, or maybe you have been in that position before where you have tried so hard to be someone else. And I want you to reflect on that for a minute and ask yourself, where did that get you? Where are you at with that? Or where were you at with that? What was it like to try to wear a mask constantly, this facade? And what did that do for your overall growth? What did that do for the people that loved you? What did that do for your loved ones? What did it do for just your overall emotional, physical, spiritual, mental health? For me, it destroyed me. It led me into therapy. It led me into this new idea of self-exploration, which was phenomenal, which was fantastic. I'm glad I went through those things, because I'm not saying I'm the supreme, woke self-actualization, reached all my pinnacles person, because that's not the case at all. I have a lot to learn, and I have a long way to go to continue to develop. But I have certain revelations, and that's because I challenged myself. It's because I decided to stop running from my problems. I decided to stop neglecting those dark areas of my soul and my spirit, and I began to embrace them. And think about that. What does it mean for you as a person to embrace those bad things about yourself? What does it mean for you to embrace those dark areas of your soul and your spirit? And is it scary? Are you frightened? Is it fearful? And if it is, good. It's supposed to be. It's supposed to be that. And everything about the human person in terms of growth, everything about it has to do, in order for us to grow, we have to become uncomfortable. And we have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. Let me say that again. We have to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it goes. True growth, true epiphanies, true revelations are going to come from uncomfortability. This is why I do this. This is why I have these conversations. I hear often so many times, Brandon, I'm uncomfortable talking about this topic. I'm uncomfortable asking questions. And fair, Brandon, I don't understand about racism. I don't understand about what it means to be affected like that. That's okay. Brandon, I don't know this. That's okay. What's not okay is if you continue to not know. Okay? It's okay not to know. It's not okay to continue to not know. We must educate ourselves. We must be mindful and aware of our whole entire being, because it's us at the end of the day. We have to look ourselves in the mirror. We live with ourselves 24/7. We are our best friend, or we can be our worst enemy. And so it is essential for us and for growth to occur by taking a step out of your comfort zone. If you don't know something, it's okay. Figure it out. Start to know. Figure out ways to do that. Ask. It's okay. And so when I started to do this for myself, I realized that I unlocked a potential within me that was by far, I couldn't even believe it. My mindfulness and awareness of myself has led me to this. I don't get as nervous anymore when I'm doing presentations as I did when I was in high school. I don't throw up. I don't, I'm not ruminating off of the next, the day before, like I can't sleep because I got a presentation in the morning. I'm gonna be so embarrassed. No, I've let that go because I believe in myself. And I believe that the message that I have is important and I want to share it with the world. And I want to encourage everybody else to do the same. If you have something that you want to say, let your voice be heard. So this awareness and mindfulness piece is so essential. And it's such a big practice of what the OpenedEyes program is all about. And that leads me to implicit bias. You know, this is, again, the buzzword of the diversity community is implicit bias. And I want to encourage you all, if you do know it, tell yourself that. And I ask this question a lot, and people say, and it stumps people. What's an implicit bias? Well, let's break it down. Like, what's a bias? Think about what a bias is, right? Certain perceptions that we have, right? When you put the implicit in there, it's essentially an unconscious bias. So it's thoughts and feelings that we have towards individuals or certain groups. And it's like this. Sometimes they're unconscious and you don't even know that you have them. And the problem with implicit bias is we often don't reflect on what our biases are. I was doing a training a few years ago at a university, and I'll never forget this. And the one woman, I talked about, implicit bias and, what is it? And, so on and so forth. And I said, and then I challenged them. I said, I want you guys to think about a time that you had an implicit bias. Now that you know what it is, think about a time that you had an implicit bias towards something or to someone. And was it you that had it, or did you know somebody who had it? And this one woman in the back, and she was a teacher, she raises her hand, a white woman, and she said, she's like, yeah, I do. And let me tell you, what it is. And she said, I was calling a customer service line for something. She was troubleshooting something. And she said, and I got this foreign person who answered the call. And she was just like, and I couldn't understand them. I got pissed. And then I hung up the phone. And I thought to myself, why do they let these people? And then she stopped herself. She was like, and this is where my head was at. Why do they let these people? And she says, then I began to categorize and generalize a whole bunch of individuals that I don't even know, just because I was upset that they couldn't understand me. Granted, I know sometimes our patience gets low with certain things, but think about that. She began to generalize a whole population because of one bad experience that she had over a customer service phone call, just because she couldn't understand. So at that point in time, she was mad that foreign people were over here in our country. She reflected on that, which was beautiful. She said, I can't believe that my mind was there. I didn't even realize it. Well, implicit bias is also called an implicit bias or unconscious bias. So there it is. It's unconscious. It's there, but we need to sort that out. And I think it's important. And of course, implicit biases lead to microaggressions. And I think I told you too, and I kind of already highlighted this, things that I've experienced from a microaggressive standpoint have been things like, oh, you dress black, or you talk black, or yada, 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 so on and so forth. Or you must like fried chicken because you're black, so on and so forth. You heard all of these things, and you continue to hear all of these things. And people just say it sometimes and not even realize the context of how ignorant it sounds. And I'll be honest with you, what's even scarier? That as a person of color, I've had these same thoughts and these same beliefs. I look at someone who might be white and I say, why is that white boy dressed like dressed like he's a black dude? Or why is that black dude dressed like he's a white boy? We adopted this. And this is from learned behavior. This is from media. This is from all of these various things that continue to, that we have access to, that we may see on a regular basis. And it just gets programmed into our mind. And it's dangerous, and it can be detrimental to the psyche. It can be detrimental to us overall. So these are the things that we need to think about kind of moving forward. And these are just some concepts, some light concepts that we discuss within our OpenedEyes program. And I encourage you all to research these concepts a little bit more, read about them, think about your own implicit biases and microaggressions. You may have displayed some microaggressive behavior and didn't even realize it. And they may have questioned on why that person take offense to that. There's some things to think about. And the way we can begin to think about this is through a concept, one of my favorite concepts that I like to call active listening. As a therapist, I am obligated to be in a session with someone and hear them out. The problem with society, the problem that we have as a community is that we often listen to respond and not listen to understand. Think about that. We listen to respond, but not listen to understand. Let's take a look at the political climate. Let's take a look at social unrest. We are in such, again, unprecedented times that we always want to be right. We live in a culture of always wanting to be right. We live in a culture of not letting another person speak because our beliefs are our beliefs, and damn it, I don't care what you think, I know I'm right. That's pride. And sometimes it's very, very hard to swallow that pride. And I think a lot of people may be able to understand what that's like. And I think that first and foremost, if we want to begin to have a conversation about racial injustices, if we want to have a conversation about social unrest, we have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to say, hey, you know what? I want to have a conversation with you because I don't understand this. Remember that what I said? It's okay not to know. It's not okay to continue to not know. So being an active listener is such an important feature for us. And if we don't begin to do that, we're gonna continue this vicious cycle that we're in. And every political year, every time, we're always gonna get into these bickered fights. We're gonna lose family members. We're gonna unfriend people because we're pissed off at them. And that's how it's always gonna happen because we're too proud and we can't handle being told something different from what's in our belief system. And that's just bull. We have to. If we're wanting to grow, again, we got to be willing to challenge ourselves in areas that we're not familiar with. And we have to be willing to hear people out. And that's just fair. If you want to engage in a conversation and a debate, cool, I'm all for it. I love it. But be willing to hear the other person out. And there's a little thing that I like to talk about, and that's called respect. And that goes a long, long way. So think about that active listening portion. And in regards to social justice, in regards to the social unrest that's occurring in our country, and how many people right now are engaging in active listening in regards to what's going on. Maybe this is where we're at fault. We're not listening to people, we're not listening to each other, and we're not willing to grow. And this is another, of course, fun topic that, that I enjoy talking about, but a lot of people get offended by, dun, 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 dun. It's that word privilege. But I'm going to switch it up for you. I'm not going to sit here and say necessarily white privilege. I'm not going to say this, that, and the other third about what that is. What I really want to focus on is what privilege actually is. And privilege is that part of your identity which requires little attention in order to protect yourself from danger, discrimination, or foolish humor. So let me think about it. Think about it like this. There is power in your privilege. We all have a privilege of some sort. As a person of color, my privilege is I have a degree. I'm licensed professional counselor. Not even as a person of color, just as an individual. I have a license. Guess what? I can get certain jobs that other people can't who don't have a license. That's a privilege of mine. And I'm very, very proud of it. But you know what? I don't let that deter me. I use that privilege and I use that ability to help other people. So for the simple fact that I have the privilege of being on here with you and having this conversation and talking about myself and my organization, that's a privilege that I am so beyond ecstatic and honored to have. And I want to use that privilege that I have with you all tonight to talk about these various things. I'm grateful, I'm blessed, and I'm just beyond happy. And so it's a part of that privilege for me that I'm able to do. I have a business, I have an organization, I have people that work with me as my team members, and we all have this mission. And it's a privilege for me to share my vision with other people. So let's get out of that whole thing about privilege being so wrong and privilege being this, privilege being that. We got to think of it differently. There's power in privilege. And once we're able to identify what our privilege is, we can use it to help other people. And I have to shout out my one of my team members, Shannon Brown, who I don't know if she's on the call. She might be, she might not. But she always uses this example in regards to privilege, and I like to credit her for this because it's just a great way to think about it. You know, think about ableism or handicap. You know, as a person who is able-bodied, I don't have to call ahead to the airports or restaurants to figure out if there's handicap accessibility. You know, that's a privilege of mine, as being able-bodied. But what can I do with that? Can I advocate for those that there is more inclusivity with handicap accessibility? Can I advocate to my city that, hey, you know what, we need our sidewalks, you know, in better conditions so our people and our individuals who are handicapped can access their wheelchair capabilities without any issues and not get stuck and not hit these bumpy sidewalks and not fall over, potentially get hurt even further. That's how I can use my privilege. So think of it like that. Privilege does not mean that you've never suffered, especially when we're talking about, you know, and again, I don't want to hone in on white privilege, but I think when people hear that, they automatically turn off. That doesn't mean that you haven't struggled. It doesn't mean that you don't go through stuff. It doesn't mean that you haven't worked for everything that you have. It does not mean that. It's actually the complete opposite. And I think we need to figure out how to view privilege differently, reframe that concept. I have privileges. Let's address them. Let's talk about it, and let's keep it pushing. Okay. Before I get into, this is the last concept that I want to get into before I get into the importance of DE&I within the workplace. And I think this is a good segue. The power of group cohesion. It's a social process that characterizes groups who members interact with each other and refers to forces that push group members closer together. So, you know, a lot of the times when I'm working with organizations, when I'm working with groups, you know, we're talking about the importance of cohesive behavior. And what does your staff look like? You know, do you have a diverse staff? Are you having difficulties recruiting, you know, diverse staff members? And these are important things to be mindful of. A lot of organizations come to me and they say, you know, we have a predominantly all-white staff. How can we be more inclusive? How can we do this? How can we do that? How can we, now that everything is going on, you know, especially now more so than ever, we want our organization and our company to be at the forefront of inclusivity. And I love to hear it. I love to hear it. But I also question, you know, okay, so what in fact, if I tell you things that you can do, what are you willing to do to get to that point? And that goes for anything, for city officials, you know, politicians, so on and so forth. You know, we hear a lot about diversity and the importance of diversity, but what are people actually doing? So that leads me to this new concept of organizational DE&I. And it's not a new concept in terms of in general, but a new concept that I'm really trying to dive into and understanding the importance of it. Let's look at it like this. Fortune 500 companies offer diversity trainings. I mean, Facebook, you think Apple, you think Google, all of these big organizations are putting a big focus on their diversity and inclusion behaviors. And a lot of it looks like this, you know, it's about goal setting. And when organizations come to me, I say, hey, okay, so what is your strategic plan look like? You know, what are we looking at here? What is your diversity and inclusion policy and procedure? So I say, okay, let's look at your goal setting. You know, are you sharing your strategies with your staff? Are you getting your staff feedback? That's important for any organization and in regards to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. And these are ways to be mindful of your organization and be mindful of your employees you know, to move forward and to push forward. And of course, we want to work to get measurable returns. You know, everything that we do, we want to measure to make sure that it's actually being effective. So organizations have to have that measurable piece to it. But despite company leaders often deeming DE&I important, the topic consistently failed to make the list of many business priorities of top firms. And this is statistically speaking, even though people are talking about it, there is a difference between talking and being about it. And I like to put it that way because, again, sometimes people just want to check a box. I think we just have to be real about that. People just want to check a box, especially now that diversity and inclusion is a hot topic. let's just say that we've had a program, we've had a a training, and I tell everybody this. I said, that's great. I can come in for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, 4 hours, conduct a training and for your staff. But what is the follow-up? It doesn't just end there. There has to be more to this. Otherwise, there's going to be failures. And that's important for us to be aware of too. And so with any organizational structure, we have to look at the reasons why diversity programs fail in the first place. Well, let's look here. Diversity and inclusion can't be learned in a day. And as I said, I can come in and I can do a 4-hour training. That's great. We can talk about implicit biases. We can identify the problems in your workplace. We can identify the problems going on in your life and say, hey, personally and professionally, how are you handling this? But if there's no follow-up, it kind of gets lost. And there's really nothing that happens. There has to be continuous follow-up. That's how we make progression happen, is when we're repetitive, when we're figuring out ways to be strategic, and when we're figuring out new ways to benefit ourselves and as well as the organization and ourselves. And a lot of the trainings that people end up having is a one-size-fits-all. So it's a cookie-cutter diversity and inclusion type of program. Personally, my program, we meet the need, and I like to challenge people. And I think that mindfulness-based practice and these mindfulness-based approaches are very essential into growth. It's not just necessarily saying, oh, you're racist or sexist, you got to change. It's understandable. And there could be individuals in your organization that might be that way. But just to hear that, that's going to turn people off. This is really about restructuring the way we think about, diversity. It's restructuring the way, it's behavioral modification, really. And that's why I like to tie in these psychological principles, because it's about us changing as people, not just hearing, words like implicit bias or microaggressions and how bad it is and don't do it. And let me give you a slap on the wrist and, go ahead about it. No, this is actually talking about real life change. And it's important for us to hone in on that concept. And again, let's be honest, change is in fact hard. Change is difficult. Nobody likes to change. Oftentimes, because it takes us out of our comfort zone. And so this is where I'm going back to my mindfulness-based approaches and saying, hey, you have to be mindful of that. What are your fears? What are the things that you're afraid to do? And you know what? Once you identify them, then damn it, you better go ahead, you better figure out ways to correct it. You better figure out ways to be better, because that's the only way that you're gonna grow. So how do we turn failure into successes? And that kind of has been going off of what I was saying. In terms of workplace structure and organizational diversity, inclusion, behavior, we have to focus on all employees, not just management. And I think that's first and foremost. I know a lot of organizations say, oh, management needs to know this and management needs to know that. Well, yeah, that's probably true. But you know what? Management and employees should probably all be on this call together, and we should talk about what the hell's going on. Because if we cannot be all to be on the same page, then we're going to miss something and we're going to have our setbacks. And we have to use empowerment, not coercing people to do something, just because you want them to. It's not a matter of manipulation. It's a matter of empowerment. It's a matter of real life change and empathy, and showing that, I care about you and I'm listening to you and I hear you and I see you and I want to make this better. And, and of course, updating and tailoring the curriculum, as I said, with OpenedEyes, one of my major focuses is taking our content, doing a needs assessment, figuring out what are the areas of focus that we really need to hone in on here. What are the areas that you're struggling with, and figure out what we can do to correct it. And in order to do that, you have to know what's going on within your organizational structure. You have to know. You have to know what the needs are that are being met. We can't just go in there and just say, hey, here's an implicit bias training. We'll see how it goes. Let's just check the box. No, if we really care about the issues that are at hand, we want to take time with it. And that's why I tell everybody, I said, don't come to me and just say, yeah, we want diversity training and blah, blah, blah. When can you do it? No. What do we exactly need? What about diversity do you really need to know about? What about inclusion? Where are the areas of focus that we really need to hone in on that you feel like you're lacking within your organizational structure? And of course, transparency is key. And that's in everything, in life, in our personal life, in our work life and school life and whatever, being transparent and just knowing how important that is and being honest with yourself and being honest with the people that you supposedly care about, just as a focal point. And so I do want to highlight too, 3 reasons why diversity is essential in any organization. And after all of that, we said, it's about employee engagement. If you want workers to be excited about and actively involved in where they work, a strong diversity inclusion program can instill that passion throughout the company. And that even goes with school setting. Let's think about the school setting. Oftentimes I hear a lot of students say, of color in particular, say, I like the school, but I'm not feeling heard. I don't feel like that there's a big emphasis on people of color. And so what happens, that organization and that university, they lose those students. You're talking about that you have a mission and a vision of diversity and inclusion, but you're failing to meet the need. It's okay to have it written down on paper. Again, you can say it and you can say that you're doing this, but there's a difference between of saying and doing. And what are the actions that are being taken to make this organizational structure better? And that's so important. And that leads to organizational confidence. The importance of having culture that embraces diversity plays a huge role in overreaching confidence of the company. And when I'm saying company, I want everybody to keep in mind that I'm also talking about universities, I'm talking about businesses, I'm talking about any type of organizational structure. This is applicable across the board. And I think it's just important for people to realize that. And what that's going to do for you too is that helps with attracting talent. So there we go. So we're almost killing 2 birds with 1 stone in regards to, hey, we're not getting enough applicants of color coming in, so we can't hire people. Well, it doesn't seem like you're doing a lot that would attract people to want to come to your institution. So again, what initiatives are you putting into place? And again, just for, and this is where I come to the conclusion, OpenedEyes is not, it's just about coming in and saying, you're racist, you're biased, you're sexist, you're a terrible person, and you should just quit your job and go live in a hole. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that we want to come in and we want to help people change. And that's not to say that OpenedEyes is going to be the sole factor of change, because the factor of change is you. We are the sole factors of our change. I can't wave a magic wand and make everybody more inclusive. I can't wave a magic wand and make all the social unrest go away. I wish I could, but I can't. But it's about transforming yourself into a better person and not conforming to the societal norms that, that are every day. Oftentimes, the one thing I hate about social media is that oftentimes we just see things and we don't look into it. We don't research it. We might just share it. How often do people send a text or send a Facebook post out saying so-and-so died, a celebrity died, and how many people share it without even really researching on whether or not that celebrity died? I've seen it so many times. And again, and I use that example to say, hey, we do things so blindly that we're really not reflecting. We're really not challenging ourselves. We're almost like robots, yes, men and women. And we have to get away from that concept. So it's about being resilient. It's about having that humble mentality, and it's about restructuring who we are as individuals. And this is something I'd like to leave you with too, and I call this the social intelligence IQ. And this is, and I always usually throw this on if I have time to go over it with my trainings and my workshops. But this is just a nice, important little checklist. And I encourage you to have this checklist and to ask yourself some of these questions. And this is a way to enhance our social structure, our social intelligence. Asking yourself simple questions, questions that you might not even have asked yourself, but are so simple. Am I aware of self? Am I aware of others? Am I aware of how others impact me? How do I impact others? Am I being mindful of cultural and generational shifts? Do I allow my biases to interfere with those I work with? These are solid areas and solid self-reflective questions, not the only self-reflective questions. You may think of more, you may think of better ones. My challenge for you is to do it. Start somewhere. And if it has to start with this, then this is what it has to do. But I want to challenge you to improve yourself. Self-improvement is such a big part of diversity education. And, you know, and so our goals, we know, OpenedEyes, as we continue to move forward in the community, specifically with the Erie community, but just in general, we're moving forward in the world, and not just limiting ourselves to Erie, but again, Erie has been a big support to us, and we owe a lot to the Erie community. We want to continue to engage it, support the Erie community, educate the Erie community. And this is for all of us, not just OpenedEyes, not just me, this is for all of us. This is how we can support each other in our initiatives, is by taking these steps and leading to this, you know, opening our minds, you know, to new ways of thinking about ourselves and our fellow citizens, opening our hearts to find courage to engage in difficult conversations around our community, and opening our eyes to acknowledge privilege, respect our differences, and staying hungry for change, and embracing that question that I started off with. And that question is, what are you? So I want you to reflect on that question tonight. I want you to reflect on that question when you wake up in the morning and ask yourself, what are you? How do you identify, and how do you answer that question? And I think it's important for us to be self-reflective in that sense. I do want to wrap up by saying, if you want to continue to, you know, to follow us on our social media platforms, please do so. You know, look us up on Facebook at OpenedEyes, one word. Instagram is OE_what-are-you. And of course, you can visit us at our website at www.opened-eyes.com. Also there, you can fill out a contact form if you'd like our organization to come in and consult with you about potentially doing any type of programming. You can submit that form in, and we'll get in touch with you. And the last thing I want to leave you with is, again, just this overall sense of appreciation that I have for everyone who has been on this call and who will view this call later on. I thank you for your time. I appreciate you. And if we want to continue to be better people, we have to challenge ourselves and do the things that make us uncomfortable. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's not one person, there's not one organization who's going to do it. We must all collectively do it. And we all must feel empowered to do so. So what are you? Ask yourself that question, reflect, grow, and be the best version of yourself. And I appreciate you guys' time, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for your time. That was awesome. I really appreciate you joining us tonight. Sarah did tell me that your dad did join us, and he says, hi, we love you. And you're also getting a lot of applause, and people are thankful for your insights. So when people do go to your website to submit that contact form, it could be any business, any church, any nonprofit, anyone can sign up for this training, right?
Absolutely. Any organization, any school, just fill out the form, ask your name and, you know, what you're interested in learning about, and, you know, and just say, hey, you know, we like some diversity trainings, and we'd be more than happy to get in touch with you to discuss your needs and maybe conduct, you know, a needs assessment to figure out what are the areas that we can really assist you, and we'll consult and we'll figure out what we need to do to best optimize, you know, your organizational needs.
Okay, awesome. And then I do have one more question for you. Where do you see OpenedEyes in 10 years? If we look back on this presentation and we're talking in 10 years, where do you see yourself taking the organization?
OpenedEyes has always been something that is greater than me. It's beyond me. Yes, it stems from my experiences, but it's beyond. It's above me. It means so much more. And I see OpenedEyes as this organization that will take flight across the world, and really offer our assistance to education reform, to you know, really changing people and challenging people to change themselves. And I'd like to be across the globe. You know, 10 years, you know, I'm always an ambitious person, but I'm also a realist. But I don't ever limit myself. I don't do that. I say, you know what, if I want to see something, you know, grow, I want to see something grow, and I will it to happen. And I see OpenedEyes being that premier program that has offices in different states and are training people to in our, you know, in the way of social justice and respect and honor. And at the end of the day, I just want OpenedEyes. I want the idea of OpenedEyes to live beyond me, you know, even when I'm gone. And so the idea is progression. The idea is growth. And whatever we have to do to get to that point, we will take those steps. So I foresee us being around, not getting rid of us. We're going to be here for a very long time.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad we could be a stepping stone on that direction forward. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. There are no other questions coming in. So I really just thank you so much, Brandon, for joining us and having this conversation. And thank you to the audience for joining us. Please check out Brandon's website, OpenedEyes. Please check out our website, eriehistory.org, for all the up-to-date information that you're looking for. And next Wednesday, Mr. Johnny Johnson will be joining us at 7 p.m. to highlight an unseen perspective with the Ada Lawrence collection. So hope you can join us for that. Thank you and have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.